Is love all you need to create an environment at home that produces healthy children with a secure attachment to self? Well, let's do a deep dive into that today because that's a challenging topic and something I have struggled with my whole life. But we're going to start with an expert, someone who has written several books, is a childhood advocate, and has looked at all the research regarding heterosexual couples as compared to same-sex couples and what those outcomes show in terms of producing a healthy adult with a secure attachment to self. And topic is near and dear to my heart because we're going to discuss something called a primal wound. A primal wound is something that happens to a very young infant when they perceive or endure the loss of a parent. Well, I could say that all three of my children had a primal wound because of the challenges that their father and I faced in childhood. So I'm going to be drawing on my own experiences of a primal wound with my children to show the challenges of knowingly inflicting a primal wound on infants through surrogacy, IVF, and other means. Let's start with the video so we can all learn a bit more about what are the three factors that tons of research has found that what are necessary in a nuclear family to create healthy children and why same-sex couples don't provide that. Let's start there. Okay, let me share bigger and let's get going.
When we were having a same-sex marriage debate, it was an awful lot of stuff about all the child needs is love. As though that is all the child needs.
Well, especially in relation to the same-sex marriage debate, the love makes a family, right, line that is so popular. From a children's rights perspective, if children have a right to life and if children have a right to their mother and father, the idea that love makes a family functionally means child loss makes that family. A child has to lose something that they have a natural right to be in that family. So,
do children have rights? What are those rights? Do they have rights?
Specifically with same-sex couples, that's what you're talking about. If love makes a family for same-sex couples, that means we are going to require this child lose their mother or father to be in this family. So to me, it's a very slick way of promoting and incentivizing some of the things that we know create, as you just demonstrated, a primal wound in the life of a child.
And, the main question is, who's more important? Because now there's a choice, right? Same-sex couples want a child. A woman who can't get pregnant on her own uses IVF. Okay? Or someone else's egg. And so whose needs or wants? Because it's a want, right? We want children. You can live your whole life. Children aren't necessary to sustain the life of an adult. It's a want. So is a child's need for a biological mother and a biological father, does that supersede same-sex couples' rights to want a child and then use surrogacy? Or, like Khloe Kardashian has said openly that when she used a surrogate for her, I think her second child, because she didn't want to be pregnant. She could, but she didn't want to. She didn't want to gain the weight. That their bond, like there was no bond. It was a huge problem for her because that baby spent 9 months bonding with the other mother, with the energy and the sounds and the nervous system. And all of a sudden the mother's not there. Well, how does the infant internalize that? Mom's dead. How do I know that personally? When my second child was born, I didn't value myself. I went right back to work like 3 weeks later in January with 2 small kids, prioritizing money. I got bacterial pneumonia, became septic, spent 2 weeks on an intubator in ICU, 5 days on 100% oxygen, and that started when my daughter was 5 weeks old. Five. And then when I came home, my mom had been taking care of her, She was staring at my mom constantly. She had bonded with my mother. Now, thank God for my mother, like grateful for my mother. But there's the primal wound. She had already lost the bond with me. And I couldn't reestablish nursing, so everybody was feeding her. And I didn't know that I needed her to, to bond with my nervous system and have my nervous system calibrate her nervous system. So we're still struggling with this challenge, and she's 25 years old. Now, that wasn't planned, but when you knowingly take a parent away, and all the adults involved understand that a primal wound will be inflicted, how are we how are we a healthy society prioritizing healthy children? Because healthy children grow up into healthy adults, and we have a unprecedented mental health crisis. 40 to 60% of our children do not have a secure attachment to self, which shows, are they mentally healthy or not? And adults are around the same. So, let's explore the reasons, and we're the only ones that can change our society. So let's keep listening.
At that time, I was staggered by the amount of research papers and authorities and so forth who came out arguing neutrality at best, but very frequently that in
even
fact,
better.
Better, yeah.
Better.
Surprising amount of
Mm-hmm.
Research is research, is it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the problem with the children with same-sex couples fare even better than kids raised by their heterosexual parents is that it flies in the face of everything else that we've already established up after decades of research on family structure. So prior to 2005, researchers were pretty much in agreement on the left and the right that children fared best in the home of their married biological mother and father in a low conflict marriage. That was kind of like the phrase that was repeated.
Because by that point, divorce really got going heavy in the 70s when my parents got divorced, the 80s and the 90s. So then they had grown adults out of the, who had been divorced in the 70s. And then by 2005, 35, 30, were grown adults that could communicate what their experience was in childhood and how that impacted them positively or negatively in adulthood. So they had this way of doing the research.
In terms of what we knew about who children were and how to provide the conditions that would lead to their flourishing. But then something strange happened in 2005, leading up until about 2015, is there was this glut of studies that kind of came on the market about how children fared no difference if they were raised by two mothers or two fathers. I was just on a podcast this morning with Josh Zepps, and we had a conversation about this. He pulled out a clipboard. And he's like, let me just read through all the studies that show that same-sex parents, that there's no damage to children when they're raised by two moms or two dads. And he's like listing off Psychology Today and this university and this study and all of that. And I'm like, oh yeah, tell me what else? And I said, there's very clearly all of these studies that if you want to say kids fare no different, there you go. There's your studies. And to his credit, he said, I know that some of these studies had some methodological problems, specifically that they used recruited samples, right? People that were invited into the study rather than examining population-based data or getting their participants at random. But it's beyond that. Those no difference studies, they were very small sample sizes. They often didn't have adequate controls. And here is what I think is the biggest problem. Most of those studies did not actually look at the outcomes for kids. They didn't look at their school records. They did not look at whether or not they were on welfare. They did not look at, they did not wait till the kids were old enough to answer for themselves, right?
Yeah, I mean, how can it be a good study when we don't know the outcome of the children?
Yeah. It was just...
Surely you can't know until they're 30, 40, 50, 60.
It is hard. You have to find them out of the house. And then you have to find them at random. So it's hard to do good studies on same-sex parented households because A, only 10% of same-sex couples are married, and then B, there's a small percentage of them that also have children. And C, you have to wait for the kids to grow up. And then D, you have to find them at random. It's hard to do these studies. And between 2005 and 2015, we didn't have time to wait for good studies. We had an agenda to push. We had an institution to redefine. We had a marital history and tradition that needed to be updated and modernized. And so you got all of these studies that are, I don't want to say junk science, but very few of those studies are going to be able to meaningfully tell us something about the population at large. Now, there are a few studies that did use the gold standard. And when they did evaluate children that they found at random using massive population samples that asked the children themselves how they were doing or evaluated government data on actual outcomes, you find that no differences actually meant major differences, especially as it related to, especially as it related to challenges in school, high rates of depression, anxiety, daily fearfulness, daily crying. Paul Sullins did kind of the lion's share of the work on that. And so this should not be a surprise to us because we already had a lot of information about what it would take to lead to child flourishing as it relates to family structure. So Josh and I also talked about how when you're not studying same-sex parenting, if you're looking at family structure and you're studying anything other than two moms or two dads, sociologists largely agree on three things. Number one, biological parents are the most invested in, connected to, and protective of kids. Biological parents advantage children in ways that unrelated adults do not. Number two, men and women are different, and those differences benefit children in the home.
So let's talk about how men and women are different at a neurological level. Women's nervous systems are far more robust than men's nervous system, and women are physiologically designed to be the emotional center of relationships. Because having that emotional charge takes a toll on our nervous systems. Men's nervous systems are more fragile, evidenced by a higher infant mortality rate among male infants. Additionally, I've talked to neurologists personally because I had nerve problems, and so they would test my nerves and they would tell me that the amount of charge they put through women's nerves makes men throw up. Men are designed for the quick response, for the protection, where women are designed for the patience and the nurturing and the compassion and the forgiveness, all right brain, feminine activities. And when women are in their right brain, which most women in Western society aren't today, hence we're seeing a lot of mental illness, much more likely to be mentally healthy. And that was true for me. I was in my left brain, for 40 years, protecting myself and only healing over the past 10 years and getting healthier in my feminine, especially the last 3 or 4, did my anxiety finally stop and my depression finally stop. I mean, I had upper back problems my whole life because my heart was hurt and out of balance. And so I needed chiropractic adjustments my whole life. I don't need them anymore because my heart is healed. And the nervous system in my heart is far more complex than my brain. And the electromagnetic field created around my heart is 5,000 times stronger than my brain, per Dr. Joe Dispenza, leading neuroscientist and trauma healing specialist. So if this field coming out of my heart is broken and fearful and anxious, you can imagine what that does to the muscles and nerves in this part of my body. Okay. And now, we have to think, men are designed to be left brain, to plan, to strategize, to get out of their emotions, which is supported by a fragile nervous system, a more fragile, right? It doesn't mean that they're fragile. It's just that they're not designed to be in their emotions all day long. Hence, they are physiologically designed for logic, strategizing, hierarchy, building society. Neurologically, when a healthy man is presented with a problem, he feels it here in the back of his brain, goes right to the front of his brain for executive functioning. Where women, healthy women, we have to make all these connections. Women connect. We stay connected to source. We're channeling all this, energy and emotions constantly. And then we have to make all these connections in our brain. So women, actually, we use our brains more than men. That's why women need more sleep. So this social constructionist idea that men and women are the same, that is, adopted by same-sex families. Well, he's more feminine. Well, the more you push a man into his feminine, the more unhealthy he is because he doesn't have healthy testosterone levels. And he doesn't have a nervous system, and our women's nervous system not only are more robust, but women have more mirror neurons. So women are physiologically designed to mirror emotions back to the child up to the age of 7 to teach them how to calibrate their nervous system in healthy ways. Because children who are abused, who don't have that in their life, like I couldn't give that to my kids because I wasn't healthy in my nervous system. Right? But kids who don't have that in their life calibrate their nervous system for fear, guilt, and shame. There's the anxiety, there's the depression, there's the addiction. So I think we have to take a real long look is this really the same? And does it really produce the same outcomes? And, a man can't be a woman and a woman can't be a man. We've proven that. Okay? So I just think we have a lot of self-reflection to do about what's best for kids with so many kids with mental illness challenges right now.
Men talk to children differently, play with kids differently, discipline them differently, and children benefit from that. Mothers nurture children in ways that fathers don't. They soothe children in ways that fathers don't. They emphasize equality and emotional regularity.
My book, My Inner Heroine, Exploring Feminine Pain, it has a dedication, and I dedicate it to a Cherokee proverb. It says, a woman's highest calling is to connect a man to his soul so he can unite with source. That's inner work, right brain work. A man's highest calling is to protect a woman so she can walk the earth unharmed. Protection, quick action, right? Left brain work. That's both sides of the brain. To create healthy, coherent, well-adjusted, mature adults, children need coherent access to both sides of their brain. So if they don't have a mother at home, they aren't modeled how to access the right side of their brain in a healthy way, or they have an unhealthy mother like I did. My mom was an alcoholic. When children don't have a healthy father at home, they don't learn how to create a coherent left brain. Because when women spend too much time in their left brain, it destroys their hormones. Because left brain produces testosterone, right brain produces feminine hormones. So when men spend too much time in their right brain, their emotions, their addictions, then they're unhealthy.
In ways that fathers don't. And those are things those are just realities. Mothers and fathers offer distinct and complementary benefits to children. And then number 3, losing a parent is traumatizing to death, divorce, incarceration. Separate studies show that sperm and egg donation among heterosexual couples show diminished outcomes with kids. So it's interesting because you've got these 3 truisms about family structure. Biology matters, gender matters, you shouldn't lose one or both of your biological parents. And then magically, when you study same-sex parenting, somehow none of that matters. Even though you're always missing a biological parent, you're always going to be missing mother or father, and you've always lost a parent due to some level of tragedy or on the open big fertility market. So right there, you probably should be looking askance at those studies that say that love makes a family and those kids fare no different, because it flies in the face of everything that we know about family structure.
Wow. So when I saw that video, I was so grateful because, as the divine feminine reincarnation of Mary Magdalene, I took us through the second coming as a collective in the fall in September of 2025. And after that, I really had to start exploring on the write-up. I say, I want to help restore a healthy nuclear family. Is that heterosexual or same sex? And then I had to ask the question, does a same-sex couple with 2 men breed life? Does it have the surrender, the feminine, and the climb, the masculine, surf the waves of life, move through the emotions? And it doesn't. So 2 men don't breed life. 2 women don't breed life. A man and a woman breed life. And we just saw that, how she discussed the studies and 3 really, reasonable reasons why it's so important to have a biological father and a biological mother in the home. And I understand people want kids, but wanting is not more important than the child's emotional needs. So Well, I'm going to bring up my write-up on the Second Coming because this is a hard topic for me. I was raised in Southern California. I voted Democrat my whole life until 2024 when I voted for Trump, which was hard for me because he was presented as like a sexually abusive man, like a rapist, and on left-wing media. And so I freaked out because I have a history of rape and sexual abuse, and so that was very hard for me, but I was brave and I did it. And I'm so glad because he's drawing really healthy boundaries with other countries and with our own country and individuals. And I feel a lot safer. And I know a lot of people feel a lot safer as well. And that's shown by an increase in non-Hispanic white women having more kids than any time in the last 30 years. And went up in 2025. We went down, we're going down, down, down for 30 years. Oh, went back up. Yay. When women feel safe, we open. And when we open, we want a relationship. We want a relationship. We're open, we're feminine, and then we want kids. It naturally comes out of us. When women feel safe, like I'll kind of quote Eva Mendes when she got with Ryan Gosling. She said, I never considered kids until I got in a relationship with Ryan. She felt safe. I don't need to ask her. I'm a woman, I know. Okay. So let me bring up my website and we'll take a peek at that. And then we're gonna take it. Okay, where is it? Oh, and then we're gonna take a peek about a Lakota healing exercise where John Hopkins did a lot of research on it about why it worked, and it shows why both sides of the brain need to be engaged to create coherence, emotional coherence inside the individual. It's fascinating. But let's start here. So, a second coming, a covenant written on our hearts. So the Second Coming happened in September of 2025, but I didn't know it was coming. I had just accepted that I'm the reincarnation of Mary Magdalene. 2 weeks prior, I had just started making YouTube videos on it. And then it happened, and I had a huge enlightenment experience, and I found out why after. And so when I was doing research on the Second Coming, it's a covenant written on our hearts. And that's an enlightenment experience. I started experiencing enlightenment, and that's why I have Dr. David R. Hawkins here, where I learned about enlightenment. And he quotes, Buddha, Krishna, and Jesus Christ. So, anyway, so then I said, covenant written on our hearts. I'm like, that's a soul-to-soul transmission. And it said that it bypasses scripture. Well, a soul-to-soul transmission bypasses scripture. That's, why they wanted people to rely on scripture. But anyway, we can get into that in another video. So, but here is where I really talk about the Second Coming is about the restoration of divine feminine, Mary Magdalene's soul, as equal to divine masculine, Jesus Christ's soul. And this is what women are talking about. Women are intuitive. We know, and that was my first enlightenment experience, was all around ascribing everything going to a masculine God. Creation is feminine. Okay, so with creation being feminine, but we're giving that to a man, that there is the imbalance. There's the lack of alignment. Okay, but then in my enlightenment experience and dealing with the wisdom, like, well, if we make divine feminine, and I wasn't aware of Mary Magdalene at that point yet, equal to divine masculine, then we mirror that in the home. Well, then women will feel valued as stay-at-home moms, which predominantly that's not valued in society in America, in Western society. That's like, ugh, I mean, when I had young kids, I found a way to kind of ask that question. Do you work outside the home? It's like wanting to have a conversation and, not offend, right? That was my solution to that conundrum. But having women in the home, the emotional center, and emotional intimacy, healthy emotional intimacy is where mental health is created and sustained. When kids have a secure attachment to self, like the Cherokee proverb, when the mom does her work, then they are able to expand their emotional range, regulate their own emotions, and mature into a healthy adult, a healthy individuation process. That's a Carl Jung quote. That's what it is. But without a mother in the home, that doesn't happen, or an unhealthy mother in the home, that doesn't happen, or unhealthy father, same way. But I saw that this is what needs to happen. And then my other enlightenment experiences started being around, the balance between the masculine and the feminine and all that, which I can get into in another video. But here I go on to say this worldview, beginning in the 2nd century, Jesus became more godly where she became more sinful, culminating in her becoming a prostitute in the 6th century. This worldview created an imbalance between men and women, culminating in the destruction of the nuclear family that we're experiencing today. Destruction of the nuclear family. And there's, research after research after research shows that a healthy nuclear family is a bedrock of a stable society. I mean, historically, what causes the fall of empires? Sexual promiscuity. Oh, we had a lot of that, So, and I'm here to right that wrong. The balance between men and women creates heaven on earth. And that is the coherence between the hemispheres. When we have coherence between our hemispheres and our neurological system, then that creates a healthy human being. Okay, so let me stop sharing this, and we're going to learn about the Lakota. I really want to share the Lakota healing technique because it really shows how to create coherence between both sides of the brain and how much value Native Americans can bring when we all think about how to be mentally healthy and how to be in right relationship with ourselves. And when we're in right relationship with ourselves, that will really help us be in right relationship with the environment. So this says that there's a Native American grief ritual from the 1400s was studied at Johns Hopkins. It processed trauma 6 times faster than talk therapy. Why? Talk therapy engages communication, that's a right brain activity, but there's no action associated with it, so there's the lack of coherence and the lack of progress. Because therapy is supposed to bring someone back into internal coherence in their nervous system, a calmer internal state, less anxiety, less depression, less, mental health challenges. So Lakota healers used it for those who lost loved ones or survived violence. The person didn't talk about the trauma, they fed it. Okay? They didn't suppress it like medications do. Medications like SSRIs suppress our emotions. They process it through. They gather stones representing the pain, then carry them to a river and release them one by one. There's the action, speaking the memory out loud to the water, and water's emotion, right? So there's both sides of the brain acknowledging, I have pain. I'm handling this pain. I'm going to learn from this pain. The final stone was kept as a reminder that grief was witnessed, not erased. So let me scroll up here. Practice was banned by missionaries in the 1800s as primitive superstition. Well, the Christian worldview is God's in charge and we're subservient. There's no discussion about, kind of how to come back into coherence internally. But Native Americans had an internal locus of authority, of control, which that is a secure attachment to self, as we saw in that Cherokee proverb, where a woman's highest calling is to connect a man to his soul so he can unite with source, where a man's highest calling is to protect a woman so she can walk the earth unharmed. There's both sides, one in their own lane, each in their own lane, okay, to create coherence. But in 2019, Johns Hopkins trauma researchers created it with PTSD patients. They found the physical act of releasing objects while verbalizing trauma engages both hemispheres of the brain. Something talk therapy alone doesn't achieve. Results after 6 sessions. PTSD symptoms reduction by 73%. Intrusive thoughts decreased by 81%. Emotional regulation improved 6 times faster than traditional therapy. And here's the protocol. Okay? Modern adaptation. Gather small objects. Each object represents one painful memory or feeling. Go to a natural setting. And why a natural setting? I'll share one more video with you after this about why it's so important to connect to Earth, okay? And why nature is so important and how it helps balance our hearts, okay? Which is, okay, we'll get into that in the next section. But hold each object, speak the memory out loud, release it physically, and keep one object as a witness. The act of physical release signals to the brain, the nervous system, that the memory has been processed. They've turned their wound into wisdom and learned something from it. It's beautiful. So the last video that I'll share with you is of the heart, and that the heart is a vortex. And what is that vortex kind of commanding? And how blood flows in a fetus before the heart is formed, and why. And it's all kind of fueled by an Einstein quote. The field is the sole governing agency of the particle. The field, meaning the energy field, is the sole governing agency of the particle, the blood particle, the human particle, but the field, the energy body, the soul. So, and creation is a vortex, like black holes create, but that's a vortex. So let's watch this one. All right, let me find a link to it. Sorry, I wasn't prepared to share this one. If I can't find, oh, here it is, Heart's Vortex. Okay.
Let me just read this because I think it's actually probably one of the best descriptions of the heart that I've ever run across. They taught you the heart was just a glorified meat pump, that it squeezes and pushes blood like some crude mechanical device, a hydraulic engine made of flesh. That is what they want you to believe, because if you buy into that primitive lie, you never ask deeper questions. But it is false. It has always been false. And the real science proves it. Dr. Francesco Torrenguas, a Spanish cardiac researcher, discovered what the textbooks refuse to acknowledge, that the heart is not a pump. He dissected thousands of hearts and found that the heart is a single continuous muscle band folded into a spiral. He proved that the heart works like a vortex generator, creating suction and torque, not pressure. He called it the...
Okay, so the heart works like a vortex generator. And the heart, that's women's emotional center. Women are a vortex, right? We attract in, healthy is don't chase men because you're acting like a man. The man works the perimeter with the providing and the protecting, with the woman being the emotional center, and a healthy emotional center is able to retain a man and attract him back every day. But if he comes back and it's abuse, yell, scream, no appreciation, then the man probably will find someone else. But here's why. And here's why, with the woman being the emotional center and the heart's a vortex, and we have to, regulate our own emotions and then help everyone in the family regulate their emotions, because every time a woman's pregnant, she maintains some of the cells from the baby to maintain that physical connection, that energetic connection throughout life to help them regulate their nervous system. I feel what my kids go through and I help them process it through as the mother. Another reason for women to stay home, because there's tons of emotional work to do. Tons of emotional work. That's called microchimerism. That's a connection with my children that an adopted mother will never have, or, a gay couple, gay men they'll never have. They can't have it because it's biologically impossible for them. I still have cells from my ex-husband in my body. So I still help him, and there's tons of studies showing that it doesn't matter where the cells are, next to you or miles and miles away, through a quantum entanglement. That was a 2022 Nobel Peace Prize study, research, but it doesn't matter where the cells are. So the energy can connect, and then that impacts the physiology. There's the field as sole governing agency of the particle again.
Helical ventricular myocardial band, and it changes everything. The real movement of the blood comes from pressure differentials, electromagnetic flow, and coherent resonance. The blood spirals naturally. It need not be forced through miles of arteries and capillaries. The so-called pump is not strong enough to push thick fluid through 60,000 miles of tubing. That is basic physics. That lie was dead on arrival. Here is the truth. Blood moves before the heart forms in the embryo. That is, by the way, a documented fact. It flows via frequency, resonance, and electric charge.
I mean, Nikola Tesla said, if you want to understand the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. Point proved.
The body is a field, not a factory. Your heart creates a toroidal electromagnetic field that radiates 6 meters from the body. This field syncs with the earth, the sun, and every living being around you.
So this is why it's so important to go out in nature, because when you're in nature, especially walking barefoot in nature, you get all of the free radicals. They come into your body, they help you reduce cortisol, reduce inflammation, that's related, and help you open your heart in healthy ways, calibrating your nervous system for more love, compassion, and enlightenment instead of fear, guilt, and shame. It helps you release the fear, guilt, and shame, feel safe in your body, helps you embody your body. But when they know, when you have, if the field is fear, guilt, and shame, why do you want to be in it? But if the field is love, compassion, and enlightenment, why do you want to leave?
It is a resonator, a tuner, a conductor. It aligns the rhythm of your cells. It feels, it remembers, it emits, and it responds to emotion, thought, light, sound, and breath. When you feel love, grief, fear, or peace, your heart transmits it. It is the central frequency modulator of your biology, not a pump.
Yeah. So it emits all this energy. Our souls communicate out through our hearts, heart and soul, right? The nervous system in the heart is far more complex than the brain. And the heart sends, I think, 80 or 90% more signals in the brain than the other way around. So the heart is the center of the nervous system. So when your heart is healed, right? Then your nervous system is healed. You've calibrated it for love, compassion, and enlightenment. Do you see? So, I hope that was helpful. Thank you for listening. This is a challenging topic, and I know it's a triggering topic for a lot of people. So I want to, address it delicately. But I think us all really grounding into what's best for us, what's as a woman, what is a woman, and what is healthy femininity, and what is healthy masculinity. We can learn a lot from the Native Americans. And they really got that figured out and understood how to exist in both hemispheres in a healthy way. So please like and subscribe and take care. Bye.